Hi, I'm David Chislett, the weapon of mass creation, and this is the Mavericks of mass creation, a series of unscripted conversations between myself and Maverick leadership expert Judith Germain. We believe that creativity and Mavericks combine to make an irresistible force for change, change that is sorely needed in a world that is developing faster now than at any time in our history. With these videos, it is our desire to share our knowledge about Maverick leadership and creativity to help you make this world a better place. And in today's chat, we're going to talk about effective Maverick leaders execute. Hello, Judith.
Hi, David.
I mean, you know what I'm going to ask, right? Who do they execute?
That's a really good funny one, actually, because Mavericks, especially extreme ones, will definitely execute you.
Just for saying that. So what do you mean by execute? I mean, that sounds a bit like buzzword bingo to me.
Basically, it means about getting stuff done, but getting it done well and making sure that whatever it is that you're doing is what you had planned to do. So a lot of people have an idea that they want to make sure gets done, but they don't really think through what does done look like. You know, what does success look like? So a effective Maverick leader will be sitting there listening to your explanation of what you want to do, and they'll always go back to, but that doesn't actually achieve what you said that you wanted to achieve. It'll look great, but it kind of won't work. And that's very annoying for other people.
Right. So, okay, so this is interesting. So what you're saying here about the skill set of a Maverick leader is an ability to connect the dots between how you're doing what you're doing and the goal you're supposed to be trying to reach.
That's right. Because what generally happens is that people get really hyper excited about executing, getting something done, but they're not looking to see. They've kind of lost what they're trying to achieve. So you have people that really, really want to implement, let's just get it done, let's just get it done. You're like, yeah, we can get it done, but it's not actually achieving what you're setting out to achieve. So why are we doing it? And that's where the challenge comes.
Right. Not seeing the wood for the trees.
Yeah. And also some people will rush to get something done. They rush to get it implemented. And the act of the implementation is where they get their buzz. And they're not really caring that they're not actually going to achieve the thing they set out to achieve, as long as they're doing something. And we've had many world leaders, for example, that will do stuff to be seen to be doing something, but not actually making any real change.
Right. So how do you then differentiate the execution from a Maverick leader and from normal execution?
Well, I would say that Maverick leaders spend a lot more time on the planning and the check-in and the strategy to make sure that it's very, very clear what it's supposed to be look like. In fact, they won't even start. So execution for a Maverick leader means getting the first steps right before you start. So a lot of people will start with the strategy and then they'll just follow through a process. Whereas the Maverick leader is like, no, we're not leaving this room until I know how we're going to execute and what does execution look like before they actually go ahead and execute. So they have an idea. So there's a template already being formed as to what execution looks like, which is why it happens so quickly when the Maverick leader does it in comparison to somebody else. Because when somebody else does it, the execution happens as they're doing it.
This sounds to me like there's an aspect of the Maverick leader character that we haven't discussed before, which is very patient.
Yeah, and there's an internal conflict as well, because they can get very hyper excited when they've got a real idea and they just want to get going. Yeah. So that's why I talk about effective Maverick leaders who are able to rein in that excitement and that just get it done. Let's just get it done. To say, let's just get it done well.
Right. I mean, that one word brings a world of difference, doesn't it?
It's hard to be patient sometimes. But that obviously that explains why there's a divergence, especially in corporate land, between a Maverick getting something done and the challenge that other people see. Because if someone's explaining a restructure or a change initiative, and the Maverick leader is following the logical steps, and then they reach the execution part and go, we started off to say we're going to get to C, but this execution will get us to B. There's no point in doing this, which then translates to, I'm not doing this. And then it becomes a challenge. And people who aren't very good in leadership sees the challenge, but doesn't see what's behind it. And some Maverick leaders needs to be coached to explain, because to them it's so obvious. It's obvious it's not going to work. What more is there? But if somebody just wants to fight with them and challenge them, those that haven't become socialized, aren't very effective, will enjoy the fight, but won't explain why the fight's happening.
So I'm hearing something in between the lines here that I'm finding really interesting, because it's sounding to me more and more like Maverick leadership has got very little to do with delivering short-term value to people like shareholders, quarter to quarter to quarter, and quite a lot more to do with long-term sustainability.
Yeah, because why bother otherwise? Right. So if you're going to do something like radically change the business structure, and it's the same if you're a business owner, why do it so it only lasts for a year? Why not do it so it lasts for the long term, or at least it's change ready so it can make those changes moving forward? But
well, I think we've all learned that if we just start making the changes, that can have an impact on the share price, which is going to keep the shareholders happy, and that makes it worth it in its own right, regardless of whether it does what it said it was going to do.
Yeah, but if you look at really successful business owners, what you'll see is that over time they take a much more steadier course. And if you looked at them like 10 years, then it might look really boring, but it'll go up. Whereas those that have those quick short-term wins, because I guess if you think about leadership, you're not thinking about the people or the effect that you're having on society or the environment, and then will come back to bite you.
Yeah. I mean, this is so cool, because now, the word maverick inevitably involves all sorts of images of egotism, selfishness, just doing whatever you want all of the time. But the deeper we get into this notion of maverick leadership, quite the opposite is true.
That's right. And that's why Maverick leaders want everyone to be Maverick leaders, whether you're the cleaner, whether you're the CEO, whether you're the guy running the business or the girl running the business, because you can make change that impacts the lives of others and society. And I don't think now, where we are in 2021, that people now see that as woo-woo and a bit naive. I think people are now, because the Maverick tends to be so far ahead, people are now going, actually, I think you had a point. Maybe we should have planned this.
Yeah. It's really making me think of the difference between playing an infinite game and a finite game. The Mavericks are playing an infinite game. The point of the game is to be able to keep on playing, to keep the pieces in play, to keep everyone on the board so that we can carry on playing together instead of trying to win it.
Oh my gosh, I've never thought of it like that, but it's so true. It's the same thing as like in an argument. So Maverick leaders, the effective ones, don't win at all costs because there's a relationship that needs to continue.
Right.
So you can, like an extreme Maverick, will win an argument by going straight to that vulnerability. Whereas a socialized Maverick or an effective Maverick leader will maybe hint at it. So that they know they could go there, but they're not going there because it's better to do this instead. And it's not in a manipulative way. It's more about trying to have adult conversations with people all the time.
Right. So it's not about winning the argument. It's about the best idea coming out on top, whoever that happens to come from.
Yeah. So I suppose if it was a battle, for example, they wouldn't see the point of throwing loads and loads of people in to win the war. They would go for the battle, so they would conserve the resources so they can fight another day, which is why I think in that execution planning, Maverick leaders will plan for failure. So they will say, what are the things that will stop this execution? And they do this before they're in the execution. So they're like, what would stop this from happening? Oh, X, Y, and Z. What can we do to mitigate that?
Right.
And if we can't mitigate it, can we live with it and move forward from that? And it's only when they've answered those questions satisfactorily will they then actually move into execution, which is why they succeed so well, because they've planned it.
Yeah.
Or they've planned their responses to it, I should say. That's probably fairer.
So they've made liberal use of my favorite question. What if?
Which is why they annoy people, because they're not leaving the room until other people have thought through the consequences of the action, whether that's a positive one or a negative one.
Right. All right. So what are the steps then to a Maverick leader executing?
I think the steps come from an understanding of the strategy, because it's the same journey, and you need to know the beginning and the end. And the beginning is this is where we want to be. So that helps with the execution. It's also knowing the resources you have, and that's not just the physical resources, it's also the people resources. Knowing the timing and doing things that fit your values and principles. So they're looking for a way to execute where there is no cognitive dissonance in any of the individuals that they're working with, and that there's integrity between the intention that the organisation is putting forward and what is to be delivered. Because if there's a mismatch, then they won't execute, even if they could execute.
Right. I'm liking this. It's you know, what I like about it is I think, you know, and I'm quite possibly guilty of this as well. You know, I'm kind of the mind sometimes that as long as you're moving, as long as you're in motion, as long as you are in action, you're along the way to solving the problem. But that isn't always true, is it? Sometimes you're just heading down the wrong bloody road.
As you were saying it, I was going, no. In my head. I agree to a point, because in the sense that Maverick leaders have, as we talked before, have a strategic direction. So as long as you're moving along that directional path, that's okay. And if you get to diverge, so a lot of people will just go along with, so they gradually move away from the path. Whereas every time a Maverick leader starts to move from the path, they stop and reassess. Am I still in the right direction? Yes, no. So if there is a movement from the original path, it's a planned one.
Wow. Planning just sounds so boring and un-Maverick.
Well, it's not as structured as how other people do it. So it's really, I have to be really careful with my words. So a plan for a Maverick may be, this is where I want to be. These are the 3 things that's got to happen. If it doesn't work, these are the things I'm going to do if it doesn't work. And this is where I'm going to reassess where I am. Now that's an effective plan for a Maverick. So it's like on a page. So a plan isn't something that's going to be 10 pages long, because quite often that's not needed.
It's a far more reactive, short-term by short-term plan of action rather than a long theoretical document.
Yeah, theory's great if it does something. And I think as well, it's that effective Maverick leaders, they know what they're good at and what they're not good at. So they understand, they don't need to do a lot of planning, because, you know, other people will look at it and say, well, they're winging it. Well, they wing it to an extent, but they know that they can handle it. So, you know, a Maverick trainer, for example, knows their content so well that they know that whatever the delegate throws up, they'll handle it. They don't plan the responses, because they'll just deal with it because they can.
Yeah. All right, good. Thank you, Judith. I think there's a couple of really important insights in there for me. Anyway, I hope also for everybody who's watching and listening to this, particularly this idea about having to plan so much more before you execute in order to keep the actions on track towards the goal. So thank you, everybody, for watching and listening in. We hope that you found some useful tips and tools to help you on your own journey while watching these videos. So please check the show notes to find our website, sign up to our newsletters, maybe follow us on social media so we can keep in touch. And there will be more Mavericks of Mass Creation in our next episode soon.